Okay folks, I was going to make this video all artsy and just scripted, but I can't be arsed, so it's going to be a blog. So I still have somewhat of a script, so forgive me if it's a little bit more dry and less conversational in tone. Again, this video is pantheism, pan-experientialism, and yada yada yada. I'm not going to necessarily be critiquing a particular strand of this approach. I'm going to be exploring the approach of pan-anything more generally. So let's begin. This video will attempt to explore two major shortcomings of a variety of philosophical approaches which attempt to explain any phenomena by suggesting that such a phenomena is spatially and/or temporally extended. These approaches are often prefixed with the word pan, meaning all. For example, panpsychism, pan-experientialism, and pantheism. The two criticisms I'll be raising here are neither controversial nor disputed, and respectively point out two logical fallacies. The first is circular reasoning, which we're all familiar with. The second is the interaction problem, which is an age-old problem in philosophy of mind. To highlight the circularity inherent in such approaches, let's consider two analogies. When biology was in its infancy, the people pondered what the difference was between living things and non-living things. It seemed like such an insoluble mystery of great philosophical importance. What they asked, is life itself? The answer that was given to such a mysterious question was an equally mysterious substance, the Elan Vital, the spark or essence of life. According to the theorists of the time, it was this essence of life which was responsible. Of course, during the past few hundred years of scientific and biological progress, we discovered the difference between non-living things and living things was the 7 life processes. There was no magical substance or property of life, and because of this, the Elan Vital failed to be a valid explanation. But the question is, was this explanation ever valid? What exactly is the Elan Vital? It would seem that the most obvious definition of the Elan Vital is that the Elan Vital is simply the property, substance, or entity that makes living things different from non-living things. But isn't this definition the very thing that the Elan Vital is trying to explain? Is positing the spark of life as the difference between life and non-life any explanation at all? Can we really reduce this spark of life to the spark of life and expect to have any explanation? Obviously not. Such an explanation is circular, and it's not an explanation at all. So it can't really serve any explanatory role. Let's consider a second example, slightly closer to home. Suppose a group of philosophers are sat outside contemplating a green plant, and we ask of them, what exactly is it that makes the plant green? The first philosopher stands up and advocates a view known as reductive green physicalism. He tells us the greenness of the plant arises from the process of the sun's light interacting with the photosynthesizing cells within the plant. The plant then reflects a certain wave frequency of light which reaches our eyes, interacts with the rods and cones, gets passed down our optic nerve and gets processed by the visual cortex area at the back. The second philosopher, who advocates a view called pan-greenism, looks rather angrily at the first philosopher and begins to give his explanation. No, 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 he urges, you've left out greenness itself. I wanted an explanation of greenness, and not of all these physical processes. What makes the plant green is the property green is embedded within it. It's intrinsically green. The property of green is spread throughout the plant. Of course, the problem with the pan-greenist is that all of the explanations he gives re-invoke green itself, the very thing that we're trying to explain. The problem with greenness will still remain and continue to remain until greenness is explained in terms of its constituent parts or processes. Pan-experientialism falls foul of the same fallacy. It explains experience as being an intrinsic part of the universe, but this is no explanation of experience at all. It's merely the experiential Elan Vital spread throughout the universe, and it's a hiding place for true explanation. So as well as being circular, the pantheorist, whatever his kind, particularly the pantheist and pan-experientialist, commit us to the existence of a strange and peculiar ontological entity. According to either view, the materialistic worldview is not sufficient to account for certain mental and/or cosmological phenomena. Unlike the traditional dualist, the pan-experientialist does not hold that two distinct types of substance exist, such as the mind and the body, the soul and the physical. But he does suggest that purely physical explanation of the universe is doomed to failure. So what he does advocate is a property dualism. There are two distinct kinds of properties which are both irreducible. That is, the experiential properties of the universe and the physical properties of the universe. These are two irreducible substances. If they weren't reducible, if the mental was reducible to the physical, it would be reductive physicalism. Okay, so let's understand the pan-experientialist is saying something like the following. It's not sufficient to describe objects, processes and events merely in terms of their physical properties, but they also have additional experiential properties which are necessary for a full explanation of their essence and/or behaviours. This sentiment is a core staple of the pan-experientialist, and I believe the pan-experientialist needs to hold this position if he's to resist being just a plain old physicalist. But now the age-old problem emerges. It seems we have two distinct kinds of equally reducible properties. The physical properties, which can potentially be explained by our best scientific laws, and the experiential or the non-physical property, which is an additional ontological commitment that the pantheorist is making. The question is, how do these two properties interact with each other? If there's no interaction at all, the experiential properties plays no causal role in the physical world, so it can't serve as any explanation, and likewise the physical to the experiential. No interaction at all makes the experiential property redundant. Now, if the interaction is one way, this makes one of the properties merely superfluous or a shadow or an epiphenomenal property, which again is explanatory redundant. So perhaps there's a two-way interaction if we accept the pan-experientialist line. Perhaps there is a two-way interaction between the experiential properties and the physical properties. This seems to be the answer that the pan-experientialist is implying, and it's the only one that doesn't entail some superfluous ontological posit. So let's suppose, for the sake of argument, that the physical properties can interact with the experiential, and vice versa. It's now pretty safe to say that the experiential properties form part of the physical causal chain. But now it would seem that these properties are behaving exactly in the same way as the physical ones. Both properties are performing the same physical job and are involved in the same causal chain. So by definition now, these additional experiential properties are properly physical. They are simply physical properties, so calling these experiential is incorrect. So that's the second problem. So let's summarize. The two problems with the pan-theorist, whatever he might be, that he must overcome is circularity and interaction. Circularity arises because the explanation merely is a rehashing out of the problem, and the interaction problem is the same problem that Descartes faced, only as applied to properties rather than substances. This has been Lord Immolation. Thank you for watching.